Welcome to the Melinda Show. I'm Melinda. Today we have with us a wonderful lawyer, Lené Alley DeRudder. She's with Coles & Thompson, and we're going to talk about professionalism. Welcome, Lené.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here.
So what do we mean by professionalism?
So do you want the professional rules definition, or just what I think it means?
What
be
you
nice.
Mean. I do too.
Be nice.
Be nice.
Be nice.
And that sounds so simple, doesn't it?
Yes, it's kindergarten.
But what's really going on? What's the problem?
You know, I was thinking about this today, actually, because we had talked about it previously. We've had conversations about it. And I was thinking in the way that our careers are structured and what we do, it's obviously naturally adversarial and litigious. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes you're so busy and you're going so much that you forget to be a human, right? You're just in that
mode. We need a reminder. You are a human, not just a lawyer.
Right.
Well, and you know, we're all made differently and all lawyers have different gifts, but we certainly learn to be a strong advocate, which can be, you know, making a good argument. People always tell me, oh, I should have been a lawyer. My mom always said I was good at arguing. So we need to be good at arguing, right?
Right.
But there's times when we need to act professionally, even if we disagree.
Right. Right.
Have you seen, how long have you practiced? 15?
So how long have I practiced? I'm like on my third career. I'm like a cat. I have practiced for 15 years.
That's what I was thinking. So have you seen it change over that time? Are people getting meaner, or has it always been horrible, or what's the situation?
I don't know if I've seen it change. I think I've changed, right?
Oh.
I think as you practice more, as you age gracefully, I think you start having a different lens and perspective as other attorneys challenge you, right? I've had good mentors. You've been a great mentor to me since the beginning. But I think as other attorneys challenge you with kindness, you start reflecting on how you're showing up, and it's still hard. But I do think that there's a trend in some ways not to trust and always think there's an underlying motive. Not to pick up the phone and just have a conversation.
Yes.
Right? Not to just be able to say, look, I know this case stinks. What can we do? Right?
We're in such difficult times in history right now.
Right.
The politics, the world conditions, the economy, that might be making people crabby.
That it's funny you say that, and maybe that's what I've seen. Like, we're so much more divisive. And I'm wondering, is that because I'm getting older and I view it differently? Like, am I starting to just sound like my parents? Lord help me. No, they're great. But, or is it that, the society is just, everybody's adversarial about everything, and it just seeps into, plus we're in a field in family law where people are going through their hardest times.
Yes.
I had a friend from law school, little petite thing, tiny firecracker, and she did criminal law. And I thought, I would be terrified. Like, how are you doing criminal law? And she said, I would do criminal law 10 times over than family law, because in criminal, you get people who've done wrong being at their best. Whereas in family, you're getting good people at their worst.
Yes.
Right. And so I think sometimes it's hard to disconnect from that. And it's not even that we're taking on their issues. It's more just the stress, because you don't have this when you're in those litigation modes, and you've been there where you're just going. You can't really say, time out, I need to go sit in the fetal position and reset. But I think that sometimes that's what we feel like, right?
Yes. Well, and as you said, our clients aren't at their best, and sometimes they're trying to drive the train in a negative way, but it's not to their advantage. They just don't appreciate that, right?
Right.
And besides just, hey, wouldn't it be nice to deal with people who are being nice? It's important because it affects our clients and our case ultimately if we can't be more professional. Do you
Right.
agree?
I do agree. And I think I think client management with attorneys, I think attorneys sometimes are afraid to manage their clients and say, well, I don't think that this is a good idea because they might get fired. And I've been fired before because I've said I am not walking into a courtroom and making that argument to a judge because that's my integrity and my reputation on the line. I'm not going to do that. And the client was like, okay, well, I'll find someone who will. And that's okay. But I think we have to tell each other more, that's okay.
Yes. It takes more time to sit down with a client and really educate them and tell them why they're the driving force direction, I want a shark, I want a pit bull approach, why that isn't to their benefit. And part of our job is to explain something to somebody in simple form, right?
Right.
Whether it's a judge, whether we're in a negotiation meeting, but also with our own client, to be able to get across to them your behavior and what you want me to do is actually not good for your case.
Right.
But it's a lot easier to just take the direction. Oh, good. Go take 25 depositions. That's a great idea.
Right. And just say, well, I'm doing, I told you, but I'm doing what you told me to do.
Right.
And I think sometimes we have to be a little bit more clear of how detrimental things can be.
And maybe you have the conversation in more than one sitting. Sometimes my clients are doing things that aren't good for them, like maybe drinking too much.
Right.
So I have one client, I never send him something controversial or I know will upset him late in the day because I suspect that's when the drinking's happening. So I'm going to send him bad news in the morning because he's going to receive it better. So sometimes we have to have a conversation more than one time. Another example of that would be we have a duty to be transparent with the court, right? Doesn't mean we have to go blab everything that the client told us. They have attorney-client privilege, but we can't misrepresent something to the court.
Right.
And clients don't like that either. Sometimes I have to sit with a client more than one time and make that clear of, no, we can't go, I know that's a lie and I can't propagate that with court. So it takes maybe more effort than the one conversation or the one email. I've noticed, and tell me if you have too, with younger people, younger than us, and you're younger than me, but even younger than you, they don't really like to talk to people. They'd rather write them a text.
Yes. Yes. And even
I have to
clients.
specifically say, call them.
Yes.
No, don't email them again. That didn't work. Call them.
Yes. Yes. I've noticed that too. And I've noticed that I'll fall into that because it's just quicker and easier, but it's not better. It's just not better. I started out doing more on the civil side, more on business litigation. And I remember a more seasoned attorney at the time telling me, just pick up the phone, always pick up the phone, right? Whether it's your clients. I mean, you have to also kind of make sure that you capture the conversation with your clients because they're under immense stress and you can't take that on. But you also have to make sure they're receiving what you're giving because sometimes I can't process it. But with opposing counsel, it is easier to pick up the phone because emails don't account for tone.
Oh, that's the truth.
Right.
You can attach whatever tone you want to it.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, so a story with an attorney that I really, really like a whole lot. We did not start off good and not a surprise because you're also aware of your personality, but you don't know how it always comes across to other people. Or if you don't know someone, you don't know their sensitivities.
Right.
And so I am built very much like my dad. I am very just direct to the point. I don't mean it personal. I've had people yell at me and on a phone call before, other attorneys, and had a paralegal in there with me and get off the phone. And she's, looked at me and said, wow, I'm so sorry. You must be upset. And I'm like, about what? Like, it doesn't even register. So
you're thick skinned.
I am, but that's not good sometimes because my emails are a lot. Like, I don't have all the niceties, which I probably should. Like, hey, how are you doing? So I try to work on it. But I think that started out in a case, and the attorney and I well, actually, the attorney found out that we had a mutual friend, and I don't know if they had talked to him or whatever. And it kind of softened them, and then it opened the door to have conversation. And now we've had a lot of personal conversations about things that we value that are similar. And it's created a different way of operating to where, I'll just text the person, right, and then call. Or I know that we have a case together, and I'll just pick up the phone and call you. And you're fantastic about diffusing anything and everything. I mean,
Thank you.
You're fantastic.
Well, I've practiced. I'm like you. I'm a direct communicator. And this is what my business coach has me do. I get to write the email, but then before I send it, I go back to the top of the email and say, "Good morning. Hope you're well." And then I go to the bottom of the email and say some other nicety, because that isn't my instinct. Right. I'm just trying to relay some information. Do we really have to say all these flowery things? But apparently we should. So that's how he has me do it. But one reason that I'm good at diffusing is one I've really worked my whole career to be that way. But I heard in person twice, and I've read and listened to all of her materials, Sharon Ellison, Ellison, and she wrote a book called Taking the War Out of Your Words. And she is not focused on the legal community. She's just writing for the world, like trying to help the world have better communication. And so her book is excellent. It gives examples of you're buying tires and the guy is being sexist and saying horrible things to you, and what do you do? So she has examples of with your spouse, with your kids, in business, when you're trying to buy something, and how do you handle the communication. But she talks about tone, like you did. Mm-hmm. She talks about how to help the conversation de-escalate instead of escalate. And that's what's so common with, litigators, is it's easy for us to escalate together. Mm-hmm. Like one person says something kind of aggressive, and then we're like, ha, 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 ha. And then we're mad, and we don't even know how we got there. This, her book and materials, I'm sure it's all streaming now, helps you to realize how to take it down. Mm-hmm. And be intentional about that. So I'm very intentional in my communication. It doesn't mean I always do it right. Sometimes somebody just makes me so mad and I say something angry. But we have to be intentional. It doesn't come naturally. The natural is to match the energy of the other person upwards. And that could be good. Like in court, I want my energy to be high. I want what I'm saying to the judge, I want to be the last person to say something to make my argument. So that personality type has its benefits. But when we're not in front of the judge, when we don't have an audience, so to speak, why are we doing that? I've been in the hall of the courthouse before with a lawyer yelling at me. Yeah. No clients are there. No judge is there. There's no audience. And I was like, he's yelling. And I just finally said, you are going to have a heart attack. I mean, what is wrong with you? Why are you letting yourself get so worked up about this? Right. It's not your life. It's not my life. And then I read about rageaholic. It's an addiction. People get a rush to their brain when they rage.
Oh, wow.
And then it all made sense to me.
That's not good.
No. But it explains why. Because I thought, why would you want to live your life that way? It'd be so miserable. But it isn't. It's giving them a rush like taking drugs. Right. So we have to help people find another way to get a rush that is healthier.
Well, and I think you touched on something, in court, and I don't want to say two different personalities, because in my professional career, I was kind of raised, I had two careers before law. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of raised that, hey, there's your professional personality and your personal personality. Yeah. And then Dawn Budner nicely said, nope, that doesn't exist. She would say that to me often. Who you are is who you are. And I think that's true, right? Who you are is who you are. How you show up is how you show up. But in court, I think we can give each other grace because we are in there to do a job. We're advocating. Yes. It's not, I walk out of a courtroom, and it's not that I don't care about the cases, but it's not my life. And I've had to remind myself, this is not my life. I did not create the situation, participate in the situation, build the facts. But I do think as advocates, and especially a lot of people get into family law because they want to help people.
Yes.
Right. So you feel so intensely responsible for getting a good outcome, for saving and rescuing, which you can't be a rescuer.
Right.
And you're actually making it worse, right? So I think we have to have grace that, hey, we're advocating how we are, but let's walk outside of a courtroom and be friends. And when I interned my first summer after my first year in law school, it was at the DA's office, and I was in the juvenile in Dallas County. And I remember watching two attorneys just be pretty tenacious towards one another during the trial. And then the judge walked out and the jury walked out, and then they were joking and laughing. And I thought, that's good.
Yes.
But I think in family law, because the nature of the beast, we say things in court, and sometimes we're not even meaning to target the other person. We're just advocating, and we're having to think on our feet, and we say something that is offensive to someone, and instead of them pulling you aside afterwards and saying, hey, I really didn't like you saying this about me.
Yes.
It just starts building, and it gets worse and worse. And then
Yes.
I don't like that attorney.
Yeah, we shouldn't be personally attacking each other.
Right.
I had one time, remember this so well. I was in front of Judge Dry, and the other lawyer literally said to the judge something horrible about me, and I didn't even know this lawyer. And I thought, what is he talking about? So afterwards I said, hey, we don't even know each other. Why are you saying bad things? And Judge Dry knew me well, so I wasn't that worried that the judge took it to be truth. And he goes, well, I don't really know you, but I know your partner so-and-so. Like, he didn't like my partner. My partner had made, not Lisa Duffy, an old partner. My partner had made him mad, and he attributed that to me and was then saying, I felt like we were in fifth grade. He's like saying horrible things. I just was thinking, what is going on? So personal attacks are not helpful, right? Not helpful. Well, let's talk about ways we can naturally improve and get along. And we do have some alternative dispute styles in the family code. What are some approaches to family law that might help?
Well, if you're talking about resolving family law, I mean, I think that we should always, outside of if there's domestic violence or child abuse, things, those kind of elements, for the most part, most cases, we should always be alternative dispute resolution driven. I think we need to start there, and you have to have conversations because the attorneys are setting the tone. So I often see where the clients are going to lock into what the attorneys are doing. And one of the things that I think sometimes handicaps the clients is when, as attorneys, we get so stuck on, well, the court would never do this. Right. And so it's good to know what the measuring stick is, but it doesn't mean that it's helpful because the judges are in such a box. They have no room for creativity, and family law is so personal. So we need to, I think, have the mindset of how do we get resolution, because we know what it looks like if you go to court, even if you get all of the requests for relief that you have gone for. I think that's where we start first. And then obviously mediation is a great tool, but collaborative, which I am new to, but I love. And I remember when I took the training in Austin and you taught it, I remember thinking, oh, okay, so this is where people get to be adults. That's super cool.
It's exactly right. We can actually be our best selves and not our worst selves. Yeah. Same for the clients. They can be their best selves.
Right.
I do. I love collaborative. I still litigate, but I only litigate because there's some cases that the people are not capable of doing collaborative. Somebody is either mentally ill or has a substance abuse problem that they're never going to solve, or deal with. And then you need a judge to tell those people. But when you don't have that, I think collaborative is the choice that people should make. And what's great about collaborative is we have much more opportunity to talk lawyer to lawyer, and we have the help of the neutrals, right? The mental health and the financial, and a much greater chance of not having confusion or misunderstanding, or I hate to say it this way, but it's kind of us against the two clients.
Right.
We're not against them. We're trying to help them. But I view us in collaborative as a team.
Right.
Instead of me versus you, it's you and me together.
together we're their safety net.
Yes.
And I love it because, you know, what I realized in one of the cases right now that I love is that I don't have to be the problem solver for them or for my client in navigating the new norm, because there is someone more qualified than me to help them, which is the mental health neutral, right?
Yes.
And so that's such an awesome tool, because for them, they're trying to figure out their new norm. So if they're able to be in this process together, there's some level of communication that's productive, but there's still a ton of emotion and layers of it. And and a lot of that emotion too is hurt, disappointment, sadness. You know, they always say fear. They always say divorce is, you know, it's the death of something. It's the death of this, you know, marriage, that it's its own entity. It's its own individual. And so you're grieving that loss. And, you know, I think that when you have someone who is qualified to say, hey, what's going on? How about we use these tools? Or let's have a conversation and get it out in the open. And it's not the attorneys.
Yes, the neutrals are so powerful. The neutral voice. If I say something, it's always met with a little suspicion because I do represent one of the clients. But if the neutral says it, they don't represent either side. They represent the whole team, the whole case. And it's not met with suspicion. So there's so much power in the neutral voice, whether it's the mental health professional, maybe helping them with a parenting plan piece, or the neutral financial professional, helping them figure out how they're going to divide their estate. I love that aspect. And working with those people, I've learned so much from working with those neutrals over all this time. They think differently than we do. They're trained differently than we are. And having all three disciplines in one case is such a great benefit to the clients. Now, when I first started doing collaborative, we all thought, oh my goodness, how are we going to talk people into paying all these people? But the truth is, it's fee shifting. We're fee shifting from the lawyers to the neutrals, because we have to do that work. If they're not doing it, somebody's doing it. And often they are less per hour than the lawyers.
Right.
So it's really not more expensive. It could be, we don't know. We can't run the case two ways, right? We can't run it in litigation and run it in collaborative and see which was less expensive. But I will tell you, I've been doing collaborative many, many years, and definitely the average cost, you know, per case is lower in collaborative.
So I would agree with that, because when I get into, I mean, I think in collaborative, you see a lot more, there's some complexity to it, right? And often property, but you get into those cases in litigation and it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, because guess what? Getting the information, making someone give you information, you're constantly going to the courthouse, and usually you have, you know, the human dynamics where people get upset. And what do they do when they get upset, or they don't like something, or someone's not doing something? If the attorneys can't work it out, you're at the courthouse, because that's your only tool in your toolbox if you can't negotiate something. And we don't have wands to make people move, right? And so I think that's challenging. And I was going to say, we started out talking about professionalism.
Yes.
And I think it all kind of comes together with even how do we set this up with clients, and we're talking about that too, is it's a foundation. How we show up and the tone we set as professionals with one another, our clients are going to pick up on that. And I do think we can be strong advocates, but set a different tone, and be mindful, because we do have a power of influence that we're not even aware of, right? I tell my clients, advocacy is not going to look like what you expect. So I'm going to be friendly with your spouse. I'm going to joke. If they have a sense of humor, that's my go-to. I'm going to joke around with them. You're going to think I'm flirting with your spouse. Not because I am, but because if I can connect with them, then when I do have an idea, they might be more likely to receive it. I'm going to suggest things against your interest in the collaborative setting, because we're brainstorming. And when we brainstorm, you throw out all the ideas. I'm going to throw out ideas, client, that I know you don't like.
Because if we don't explore them, we won't see the ultimate conclusion. We have to go through, okay, well, we don't like that idea, but why don't we? That opens another door. Oh, okay, maybe we can solve it this way. So I love to be the one making the absurd option on the table. Hey, y'all could do blah, blah, blah. And then they're both like, well, we both hate that idea, Melinda.
I love that. I love that you educate your clients that way too, because you can use that in litigation or collaborative, right?
Right.
You can say, I'm going to be kind, because it goes back to kindness will go a long way. And even with our profession. I recently, in the past few months, was reminded of the power of the apology.
Yes.
For myself. So I have a tendency to be sarcastic. And if you don't know me well, and flippant, and it's usually not well received. And so I had a mediation with someone, and I was real frustrated with the attorney and had my own opinions about it. And not being mindful of grace or anything of what's going on with that person. Just frustration, and I've had frustration with this attorney from previous cases because our personalities are different, and that's okay. But I was on the phone, I had picked up the phone and was trying to ask a question, got a response I didn't like, and made a flippant response. I don't know. It was something like, well, I guess you just want to blow this up and go to court. Great, let's do that, and which is not a good thing to say. And so that didn't go well because I got hung up on. And so, but what happened is, the communication was not there. So to talk about something and to talk about a case that should be settled, that should be able to work out, should not go to court, we couldn't, it wasn't going to happen because we had preconceived opinions about one another, and I wasn't helping that. So we did have a hearing, and after the hearing, I kind of called the attorney over, and they're like, "Oh, great, I have to talk to you." and I apologized, and I'm a big, and it's so funny because at home with my I call them the littles, right? And they're middle schoolers. When they're not getting along or they do something, I'm like, you don't have to say sorry because you're not a sorry person, but you can apologize for. What are you apologizing for? Because it lets the person know, like, hey, I don't mean to be this way. I don't want to offend you. And I recognize that this was unkind to you. And since that apology with that attorney, it has just changed the communication. I mean, and you start learning a different side of a person that you're like, oh, yeah, I like this person, right?
Have you ever read Brene Brown's material?
I haven't read that one.
Oh my gosh. So Brene Brown, she's a sociologist at University of Houston, but she did a TED Talk and she kind of became famous after this TED Talk. Yes. She's a great speaker and she's written a lot of books, but she talks about vulnerability and the power of vulnerability and authenticity. And when we're willing to be vulnerable like you were to make the apology, and people read that as authentic because you were, then it really allows for connection, human connection. And so it's another author. She's not writing about the legal community either.
I love Brene Brown. I've watched her TED Talks, and she is, I've watched the one on vulnerability.
Yeah,
she's fantastic.
She's so powerful. And when we all need to spend some time on resources like that, right? Because this stuff isn't easy. You always hear people say, what's this, secret to a happy marriage? And it's communication, but that's said flippantly, right? And almost jokingly, it sounds easy. Communication is not easy. None of us are good at it naturally. So I think for our listeners, my encouragement is to spend some time improving. Besides being mindful, right? Just being mindful about it and top of mind, dig into some materials and get some new tools. We need some new tools in our toolbox sometimes because if our go-to is sarcastic and flippant, what's our new go-to, right? We don't know. Right. So we have to build that. Well, let's talk a little bit about your practice. Okay. So what part of the Metroplex do you cover?
So I've practiced in a lot of the outlying counties, right? And I'll take cases every once in a blue moon, but I primarily stay in Denton and Collin. Collin is my main county. And then I have cases down in Dallas, and I do practice. It kind of ebbs and flows of sometimes I'll have a lot, sometimes I won't be down there, but for one or two cases.
And you do divorce and divorce related?
I do divorce. I do family law, right? I do family law.
How do you define that?
Modifications, suits affecting parent-child relationships.
If they have a baby together, it doesn't matter if they were ever married.
Right.
So you would handle that kind of matter.
I primarily do divorces, though. That's kind of my primary staple. I love divorces with business entities that are super complex property issues. I kind of thrive on that. I enjoy it.
Allows you to use some of your business background.
Yes. And so that's fun for me.
We're going to put your contact information on the screen.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us. This has been great to encourage ourselves and others, hopefully, to be more professional. We're going to improve things, Lené.
We're going to follow your lead.
Thank you.
Thank you,
very
Melinda.
much. You're welcome. Thank you for tuning in to the Melinda Eitzen Show. We would love to hear from you. If you have any requests, comments, let us know at melinda@d-elaw.com. And we'd love to have you listen again next time.